Hello everybody, it's Josie here. I am talking about the books I read for the female to female February readathon. So this was a kind of a readathon based on reading books with beautiful female-female relationships in them over the month of February. And I've read quite a few books, so here's some of them. I think these were the books I picked as part of sort of the challenges for the female to female February readathon. But actually, I've been reading a load of books in February, and quite a lot of them I hadn't expected to actually have female-female romances in them, or they weren't necessarily billed, or the blurb didn't necessarily tell you that's what was going to happen. And actually, I've been surprised by quite a few books. So this I'm going to do as sort of my part 1 wrap-up for the month. I have a part 2 wrap-up as well, because I also took part in Feminist Feb, so all of my reading this month has kind of been feminist based, and I've tried to incorporate it in all my other readathons that I've been doing, so I'll wrap that up because there's quite a few books. But let me start with female to female romances. So the first one I've got here is this gorgeous book over here. It's called Unspeakable by Abby Rushton, and I think this was a new to me author category. And this book, it was actually more than I expected it to be. So the synopsis is you've got it's teenagers, so it's a YA book, and the main character, you very quickly realize in the beginning of the book that she isn't speaking, so she's mute. And it's not because she's medically mute, but because she's refusing to speak because of a traumatic event that happened. And this traumatic event involves her best friend. And you kind of, the whole way through the book, you find out what happened and what it is that's made her mute. But as a other part of this book, she meets a girl in her school that becomes her friend, and then becomes more than her friend. So this book, it surprised me because I thought it was going to be sort of a straight up YA romance, but the whole element of her being mute, of not speaking, and then finding out what actually happened, there's a lot of really interesting themes in this on kind of friendship, on loyalty, about how trauma is handled and how it affects people. So I found this to be a really, really good book. I think I gave this 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. I would really recommend it. It's a quick read, but it's a lot deeper in themes than I thought it was going to be. So really enjoyed that. Footnote, I enjoyed all of these books. So the next one that I've got here is Sarah Waters' Affinity. So this was my historical romance book, and Sarah Waters writes almost exclusively historical kind of lesbian based romance novels. So this one has a kind of a bit of a mystery element in it as well. So the protagonist, you start off with one of them is in jail, and she is there because she is a medium, and something happened during one of her sessions, and she's now been put in jail. And then you have the other protagonist, who's the lady that comes in, and she's sort of visiting the jail, and this is kind of her, I don't want to say hobby, that sounds terrible, but she's sort of almost like an outreach type of thing she's doing, where she's visiting the jail and visiting these women and kind of having conversations with them. And I think this is sort of the early 1900s this is set in. And you know, she's going around, she's visiting them, and she's talking to them, and she strikes up a friendship with the medium. And it kind of, I don't want to give too much away because it's actually kind of a bit of a almost a bit of a thrillery mystery element to this one, and I have to say I really enjoyed it. I gave it sort of 3.5 stars because I enjoyed it, but it wasn't a 4-star book for me. Yeah, I would recommend it. I think the kind of the spiritualist element is fun if you like that. There's kind of twisty turny towards the end, what happened. There's not that much romance. If you're looking for like a lot of romance, there's not that much in it. It's more in the mind than actual romance. But as Sarah Waters go, I did enjoy this. It's not my favourite, but I liked it. And footnote, I'm not really a historical fiction fan reader, so maybe if you really enjoy historical fiction, you'll probably enjoy it a bit more, but that's not really me. So the next one I read is this one over here. It's called Last Words from Montmartre. And this, I think I picked it as my short, or like novella. It's a really short book. It's only, how many pages? It's only like 160 pages long. And this is a translated work. So Chi Myogen I murdered that name. I am so sorry. So it was translated from the Chinese, I believe the Chinese. So the author's actually Taiwanese. And this is really fascinating. So I read 2 of Chi's books this month. So Notes of a Crocodile was the other one, and this one. And I really love both of them. I probably love this one more. And it is basically a series of letters that one woman is writing to her ex-girlfriend and talking about the relationship. And it's heartbreaking in places. It's also a suicide note. So just to trigger warning for that. The author herself committed suicide at the age of 26. And many believe that this is almost like part her real suicide note. So, but I found this incredible. The language is beautiful. I think it's very well translated. It really is heartbreaking. It's an interesting insight into relationships, into the way people can hurt each other or help each other. She is obviously she is gay, so the woman she's writing to is a female. But it's so hard to describe. I really, I have to say, enjoyed it, but I just found it incredibly moving and connected with a lot of it. And the same thing with Notes of a Crocodile. I found myself underlining a lot of stuff. But this is not a happy, cheerful book by any means. And like I said, real trigger warning for depression and suicide in this. But I loved it. Probably one of my books of the year so far. Just because it was, I connected with a lot of what was going on in it. And it's probably more of a personal thing on that one. Then the next one is this one over here. This is Wild Girls. And Diane Southam writes a lot of non-fiction based books. So this is based on the real lives of Natalie Barney and Romaine Brooks. I'm trying to remember what her surname was. So they were painters and artists and poets in Paris, sort of in the early 1900s, 1920s, and this is a fun book to read. So it's about that whole sapphic scene in Paris at that time. Things I adore in life, Paris is one of them, and I love reading anything that is set in that era, and I love Paris for the arts and culture. And there was a huge sapphic scene in Paris at the time, and it was very open, and a lot of ladies were either experimenting or were very openly queer and were having relationships with each other, and there were lots of kind of clubs and salons that they would go to, and this is awesome. This kind of captures that whole environment. It tells you the story of these 2 women that I really wasn't that familiar with. It mentions the other women that I do know, and it's just a really wonderful romp through that kind of era. If you love the era, if you love Paris, if you want to know more about sort of the sapphic history of these wonderful women that kind of paved the way. And it's quite ironic because when they're in Paris, they can be open about the relationships, so they can be open about who they are. Claude Cahun is another one of my absolute favorites. She's briefly mentioned in this. So she was also a artist, and she was very famous for kind of dressing up as a man and being very open about her relationship with another woman. So if you love all of that, I would highly recommend this book. It's a lot of fun, but it's also non-fiction, so it'll give you a wonderful kind of historical take on everything, but it also reads like a novel. So I highly recommend this. It's like 4.5 stars for me. Love that. And then the last one I've got here is this one over here. So it's The Long Way to a Small and Angry Planet by Becky Chambers. I have been dying to read this book. It's been sitting on my TBR shelf forever. Everybody's recommended it to me, said, this is great. I don't usually read that much sci-fi. I'm trying to get into sci-fi a bit more. So from my personal perspective, I would recommend this as, if you're not really that into sci-fi, to read it. It's basically about this crew of kind of oddball characters on a spaceship, and they're basically punching holes in space. But for me, this book, again, it was a lot deeper than I thought it was going to go. It is so much about friendship, about identity, about understanding, race relations, about love, about the strength of being supported. It was really great. There's some really funny moments in it. There's some incredibly touching, poignant moments in it. it's got all the space jargon if you like that, but really it's about the people, about this crew, and I love the kind of oddball crew and their different kind of eccentricities and how they supported and really were there for each other when it counted. There's also a very lovely interspecies female-female romance in this, which I loved. And there's more books, there's I think 2 more books in the series at the moment. I've already bought the second one. Third one is coming up in softback really soon, so I'm definitely going to read the rest of Becky Chambers, and I love this. This is also on the list of one of my books of the year. This is like a 5-star for me, so loved, loved, loved. And then the last one I read, and this wasn't on my TBR, but I read Slayer! And I'm not going to go into too much detail because I'm a massive Buffy fan. I love Buffy the Vampire Slayer, it's like my all-time favourite show. And I'm going to do a kind of a full review on this because I'm really excited to talk about it. But it's basically from the world of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and it's about Slayers, and it's about vampire hunters, and about watchers. I adored it, and unexpected, and the reason I'm putting it in this video, unexpected footnote, there is a female-female relationship brewing in this one, so I was very excited about that as well. So yeah, love this book, but I'll do a separate video on that. But anyway, those are all my books. I will see you guys soon. Have a good March. It's almost March. Today's the last day of Feb. But yeah, have a good time, and I will see you all again. Bye.